Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 108. I am here today with Tim from Tim Burbage. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, Burbage, yeah.
Burbage from Tim Burbage Reads. It's kind of put up on short notice. It's been kind of a weird day today, but we're here. How you doing, Tim?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you, Britton?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's the end of the semester. My alarm is going off. Sorry about that. It's been kind of a busy day. This morning I woke up. I went to the dentist to get something done. Then I got home. I slept for about 3 hours. Got back up. Went up to my college, and I just got back, and we're here now. So yeah, I haven't done one of these in a while because, to be honest, did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to university, we
Or
call it.
well, they
Yeah, I
call
did
it
go.
university over there.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I'm sure you remember this from your time, but it really sucks up a lot of your time when you go. So there's not really a lot of time for podcasting. I did get some done, but since December's coming around and I'm about to be out of school, I decided to get some done before the end of the year. So,
Yeah.
and you were one of the lucky few who got in. So,
Oh, I'm very privileged, Britton. Oh, is that podcasting applause? That is.
you might think that podcasting, I'm always telling my parents this. You might think podcasting is just sitting in a room and just hanging out, which it is, but it takes a lot of energy out of you. It takes a lot of time. You got to put it together. You got to figure out a time. Yeah, stuff like that. It's not easy.
No, I'm
Though,
looking forward to this. Though. I like listening to your chats. I love just how kind of free and easy they are.
well, I hope the mic isn't bad because some of the early ones I didn't have this very nice Shure mic that I got almost
It's a very
last
nice
year.
mic.
I can't believe it's already been a year since I've had my new mic, but here we are. That's the world we're in right now. Um, but yeah, some of the early ones the mic isn't as good. So
No, it's good quality. And
now it is very good quality. Um,
yeah, I do think when doing videos and things, audio is actually more important than visual a lot of the time, especially when you're talking about books. Just
yeah,
because a lot
no.
of the time people just put it on and do the washing up or whatever.
I mean, I hope that people listen to this. I mean, I don't know. It's not very visually interesting. We're just sitting here and talking. But yeah, you've started hanging out on my channel recently. You joined my Discord and
Yeah,
uh, yeah, no. So you have a channel. You have about 150 subs. So congratulations on that.
thank you. Hit
Um,
150 a couple of weeks ago, so
yeah, it's
very nice.
I just hit 500 not too long ago, and
Very nice.
hoping to
Congratulations.
have well, as of the recording of this video, I'm hoping to have it out on Friday. So yeah, there's still time if anyone wants to still send questions. Well, probably not by the time that this is up, but yeah. Anyway, so you run a YouTube channel where you talk about books.
hmm
You don't just is there any genres you cover in particular, or you just cover what you feel like?
I generally cover what I read, and I read a fair variety, I believe. Um, this year, I've been reading quite a bit of fantasy. Um, Partly influenced just because you find different booktubers, and kind of all the ones I found read a lot of fantasy, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I've previously always been a fantasy reader, but kind of had gone to the way a little bit. I read a fair amount of classics. I've been reading a lot of Jack London this year.
Yeah, I see that. I'm quite fond of Jack London. I've only read his animal related stuff, but I'm
Yeah,
quite fond of it. He's very good at, and also the Iron Heel, because believe it or not,
yeah.
Jack London did write science fiction.
Stuff one an early dystopian novel. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Now is it good? I won't go into that, but it's an interesting read.
yeah. Yeah. So I read Call of the Wild probably about 10 years ago, like as an adult, you know,
Mm.
not as a child, and I thought, wow, this was amazing. And then I read The Scarlet Plague, which is another dystopian book, and White Fang, and then on Kindle I saw that I could buy the all of his novels
Mm.
for like £1, like $1.50 for you, on Kindle. So I bought that, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go through them. I'll just do one a month, and some have been really good, and some have not been so good. A lot of them I'd never heard of before. Um,
I know.
and
I've only heard of. Well, I've read. I've read the famous ones like White
yeah,
Fang, Call of the Wild. I want to read his The Sea Wolf. I actually own it. It's over there. I don't want to pull it out.
so good. It's
Um,
so
I've heard of
good.
his
It's
one about the one about him being an alcoholic. It's very autobiographical. I think it's called like John Barrymore or something. No, it's an actor.
um, yeah,
That's an actor. My bad. No,
yeah,
not John
yeah.
Barrymore, but it's John something. I think
Martin
it's
Eden. Martin Eden
there is
is the
Martin
one where,
Eden. Yes,
yeah, that's like
I've
I
heard of
read
that
that
one.
a couple of months ago. But no, I'd recommend the Seawolf. I think the Seawolf was really, really good. I kind of sell it to people um, as if you want to read Moby Dick but don't want to read 700 pages about how a ship works and how the whaling industry works.
I want to reread Moby Dick again because I read it when I was a kid. I read like
Really?
okay.
That's
I
an
didn't
interesting choice.
I didn't read the well. I should say I don't know if I read the actual like full thing. I read like the illustrated classic version.
Oh,
So
okay. Like an
yeah,
abridged kind of,
uh
yeah.
huh.
So it wasn't
A
700
bit
pages
more
on
kid
whaling.
friendly, and it's
Yeah.
um. I read that. And I remember really being fascinated by the like weirdness of it, like just kind of the like it's hard to describe. But then I tried reading it in high school, and I just had a really hard time with it because, like, my God, he meanders a lot.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
So I think the Sea Wolf is similar in that it's about like the sea captain is the main character, and
Hmm.
there's incredibly interesting psychology at play. Um, but it's not 1,200 pages long.
Well, I'm
You know,
thinking about reading Moby Dick again at some point, but I just haven't
I'd like to
really.
read it. I've got that on my Kindle, because
I
it
just
was like a free classic. So
I just
click done.
I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. It's
Yeah.
like I'm really bad at rereading because like I tend to like I like to
Oh,
move.
I
I like
hardly ever reread.
I'm on like I just keep trucking forward. I'm like there's
Yeah.
other book like don't get me wrong. I'm not against the idea of rereading. I do it from time to time. It's just not something I generally do.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
not
see
something
like
I do.
other YouTubers who do it all the time, and I'm just like, how do you do it?
I've only reread two series. Um, One was Harry Potter,
Mm,
which I read as a kid as they came out because I'm old. So for me, I was the one waiting in line, a year between books, like waiting, waiting, waiting. And then I read them when I was in my 20s, and again, got that nostalgia fix. And then I reread the his Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman,
mm,
which again I read as they were coming out, and then
mm.
I read again in my 20s, and that was a completely different book as an adult compared to a kid. Like, those are the only two things I've ever reread.
Yeah. I mean, man, what have I reread? I've reread Blood Meridian a couple times. I've found the time for that because I really love that book. I've reread mostly like a lot of my rereads are like comics. Like I've reread like Watchmen a couple of times.
Yeah, that makes sense because like a graphic novel,
It's
you
easier to
can,
reread a comic.
yeah, yeah.
um, oh man, I can't think of many others I've reread. Well, aside from when I was a kid, like I read like Oliver Twist a dozen times when I was a kid.
Yeah, because you just pick up the
Dozen.
same thing again, and yeah.
And
I
the
do think,
Bible. I listen to the Bible every year, but that's not really like I don't know if that's like yeah. I won't go into that. I don't want this turning into a religious chat. At least
no,
most of
it's
the
not
time.
one of those chats. Yeah. Um,
But
no,
it is a read. I do it every year, so it is a thing.
oh, okay, yeah. Um, I do think it's generally when I read a series as well. I think because I grew up reading books, like I have to wait for the next book,
Mm,
you know, because I was reading them as they were coming out, or I couldn't get them at the library, or I couldn't buy them. So I enjoy the wait between books where it kind of ruminates in your brain and you think about things and then you come back to it. So for example, one of my favorite series that I've ever read was the Mortal Engines series by Philip Reeve,
Mm.
kind of a young adult, steampunky kind of book. They made a film out of it. I've never seen the film. I've heard it's not very good. Where cities become mobile. They're on these huge tracks and they go around and they eat other cities. It's very cool.
I have heard
But
of this. I remember like
yeah,
they put out a movie a while back.
yeah. And I read the first book and I was like, I absolutely love this. But I made sure that I didn't read the next one straight away. I kind of waited about 6 months and then came back to it, just because it just makes the book series last longer for you. So I read those books for 2 years, you know, um, and I remember it much more fondly than I think if I read them back to back to back to back and read it in, you know, 4 weeks.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I'm really bad at keeping up with current series. Like, man, I'm still trying to catch up with everything else. The most current series I'm reading that's unfinished, well, that isn't the Song of Ice and Fire,
yeah.
is probably the Dark Star trilogy from Marlon James. Hey, you stop that. No, stop.
Okay, I tried reading. I got bought A Brief History of Seven Killings.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I'm gonna try for that 2025. I'm actually gonna do that as
yeah.
an immersion read. I'm gonna try doing immersion
Oh, cool.
reading next year.
Yeah, because it's written in like patois, so
Uh-huh.
it's. But I wasn't really a big reader at the time. Then I'd kind of fallen out of reading, and
Mm.
that's a hard book to read. So now, like,
Yeah.
I didn't finish that. I didn't get very far in that at all. So that's something I might be interested, because it's just an interesting bit of history, because it's about the attempted assassination of Bob Marley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Um.
so, but I haven't read his other books.
Yeah. I'm actually considering with a friend of mine. His name's Soshia Zoo. I'm hoping to. I actually had him on my podcast a few months ago. I'm actually considering doing a video about Black Leopard, Red Wolf, and Moon. Maybe I'll add Moonwitch, Spider King because I've read that now. Just kind of how to read it, because I've seen people who've just bounced off of it. I've had friends who've bounced off of it, and it makes sense because like it's not very like it's not a conventional fantasy story. Well,
Mm,
well, let me back up. It kind of is like it's it's a quest. At least Black Leopard Red Wolf is.
yeah,
So it's not like completely out of the it's not like
yeah,
Jonathan Strange Mr. Norrell where it's like, well, I've never read anything like that before.
that
Um
was brilliant.
um but um but like the way it's written and the way it's told can throw a lot of people off, and so I'm thinking about making a video describing, not spoil it too much, but like how to read it,
Yeah,
maybe give some tips on it. I've tried getting and Soshiazu has been really, he was enthusiastic about it. I just haven't gotten him to sit down a time we can do something like that. So maybe 2025 I can do something like that.
yeah.
Um,
Everything's just getting put off till 2025 now.
yeah, it's December. Um, it's it's busy time of year in December. Christmas and
Oh, happy Thanksgiving, by the way.
oh, thanks. Yeah. I generally don't care for Thanksgiving because I'm a picky eater and I don't like a lot of the Thanksgiving food. So, and
Mm,
people would give me crap about it when I was a kid, and I
yeah,
hated it. So, yeah, I'm not a big Thanksgiving guy.
yeah. Food's a big part of Thanksgiving, isn't it?
I'm not a big foodie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, no, it's 2024 has been a weird year all around. It's been a lot of highs and lows. Like I went to Florida in October. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice.
And then just it's been a lot of crap going on. My reading was pretty slow this year. It was probably not a great idea to. I mean, it took me like 4 months to get through Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell. I enjoyed it. I thought it
Uh,
was great, but it
yeah,
was like one. I had a bunch of stuff get in the way, and
yeah,
Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is one of those like you have to sit down and pay attention to what's going on. It's not
yeah.
something you can just pick up.
I audioed it fully. Um,
Oh, really?
because
Okay.
yeah, and it still took me 2 months to audio.
I've heard the audio is very good. I've had friends who've spoken very highly of it.
I'm not a big audio person generally. I've only really listened to Jonathan Strange, and I listened to the whole Chronicles of Narnia last year
Hmm.
on audio, which were good. Again, I'd never read those as a kid, and they've got loads of Shakespearean actors who are quite big in England. I don't know if they've made it to the US, but like Derek Jacobi and people like that,
Oh, yeah, I know who he
doing
is. He's in
yeah.
Doctor Who. He was the Master.
He what? Oh, cool! You're a Doctor Who fan. That's all good. Um,
I'm a lapsed Doctor Who fan, but yes,
well,
I do like Doctor Who a lot.
yeah. Cool. That's good. But that's like my favorite show. So yeah. So they did the narration of the Chronicles of Narnia, which were great. Yeah, but I thought Strange and Norrell was really interesting. Um,
Yeah, I read it from like April to July. So there you go. And it
yeah.
was finally when I had free time I finished. I'm like, I'm finishing this damn thing. I'm having a really good time with it. So yeah, it was.
Well, the end really accelerates, doesn't it? Like you just the end is
The climax is so good. Like, man,
yeah.
it's so good. Um,
My only complaint is that they didn't need to go to Venice.
well, my only real gripe was like the war stuff. I mean, though there was some like stuff I liked in the war part, but it was kind of like, all right, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I thought the war stuff was really interesting. I said it was like Jonathan Strange, like they're in a band and he goes and does a solo album, and that's the war where he discovers his sound and he discovers what he can do without the rest of them, like without Mr. Norrell.
That's an
Um,
interesting. That's an interesting analogy there.
yeah,
Um,
and I actually read a book about Waterloo earlier, or not Waterloo, but the Napoleonic Wars earlier in the year. So it was like, oh, and the wars in Portugal, and
it's definitely like
um,
up there on my like favorite reads of the year because I did see your conversation you had with oh my gosh, a lot of people.
Hardy's books. Yeah,
Hardy Books and Cam Campbell, who I would like to have on this show at some point. He seems like an interesting guy.
he's very interesting. Yeah,
Um,
like he's got the best voice in the biz as well.
oh yeah. There's some other people. I think Rebecca from
Yeah, Rebecca Nicole and Andrew Watson
Andrew
and
Watson,
Lady
yeah.
Mayor. Yeah,
Which I'm surprised he didn't read Jonathan Strange. Seems like something he would like, I thought. But, I've also invited Andrew Watson on this show. I just haven't. Like, here's how I do these. Like, I'll send invites, and then sometimes I'll forget, And I'll be like, oh, yeah, I invited these people. I got to check back in with some of them. So, yeah, that's kind of what happened there. Now it just worked out really well. I'm like, hey, you want to come on my show? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. So, there we are.
yeah. Always say yes, then figure it out afterwards.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about like my favorite books of the year now, since we're kind of at the at that kind of end of the year.
Yeah, I always find it funny that people like on BookTube and stuff make their videos like the best books I read, and they release it like early December. I'm like, but you still got loads of books to read.
Yeah, no, I tend to wait till I finished all the books I want to complete for the year, or
Yeah,
early January.
yeah.
So,
January is where I'm planning to do my stuff.
um, but yeah. So I have some like Kindred is probably my favorite of the year so far. Well, not so far. It kind of just is at this point because nothing else has really topped it.
Yeah.
Though Lonesome Dove and the things they carried were both really excellent as well. Came very close.
What's
Um,
the things they carried? I haven't heard that one.
that is it's about Vietnam. It's pretty
Oh,
famous
okay.
out here in the States. You read it in high school. I did not. I finally got to it this year, and I thought it was fantastic. So,
Okay.
um, and well, Lonesome Dove, like a lot of people really, it's one of those books like everyone told me to go read. They're like, Britton, you should read Lonesome Dove. I think you'll like it. And it's really good. So yeah, depends on
Yeah,
what you think of
I've never
westerns.
heard anyone not give it 5 stars. You know what I mean?
I was
Like,
about to say, yeah, I don't think I've heard anyone like not like it, or at least
yeah,
like not find something enjoyable about it.
it won a Pulitzer, didn't it?
It
So,
did, yes, it
yeah,
did.
and so for it to be like prize winning, quite a lot of prize winning fiction people bump off, because it's literary and it's 200
Well,
pages
okay.
about sand or whatever.
Uh,
But no one seems to have bounced
there's
off.
only one
Lonesome
I've
Dove.
said who were kind of met on it, and I think they're called like. Have you ever heard of Life on Books? It's these two guys. They do a podcast.
Uh, yeah, I think I have
They're
actually.
bearded. I think it's Life
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah,
Books is
yeah.
what it's called. I'm not entirely.
Yeah, I saw them when the Times 100 list came out, and they kind of made their own lists. And I was
Oh
like, oh,
yeah,
these guys have
I
read a lot.
I made a
Like,
video on the New York Times 100 best books of the century, and I'm like, well, I haven't. Well, one, I haven't read a lot of these books, so
yeah,
there's that. And two, here's these other books that weren't on there that I was a little irritated weren't on
yeah.
there.
There's a lot of snubs.
I'm like, Strange and Norrell should have been on there. Dang it.
Yeah,
There were some author picks that had Jonathan Strange on there, so I was like, okay, that makes sense. Though I've only read it this year, so I've just joined the train.
just
Finally.
joined it. Yeah, but like, I don't read a lot of new books.
Oh
You know,
God, I'm bad at keeping up with the last like new book I got
like,
was Alan Moore's new book, which is The Great Win. And I was like,
okay,
am I gonna
a
read this
full
year?
novel or graphic novel.
Oh no, it's a book. Here, I'll
Okay,
grab it
cool.
real quick. Yeah, this puppy right here.
Mm.
So I'll probably save it for next year. Um, but yeah, it's his take on fantasy, and I'm like, well, I'm curious what wacky, weird ideas he'll bring to the fantasy genre. If
And it'll do really well,
I'm
and
sure
they'll
he'll do
try
fine.
to adapt it, and he'll be really grumpy about it.
Oh yes, what isn't he? I made a joke on the Alan Moore Reddit the other day. I'm like, what hasn't he disowned? And people got mad. Like people were mad
Yeah,
about it. Like they were just like, the stuff he owns, you fucking idiot. I'm like, okay, I
he
was just
is.
being facetious, but damn, like
Yeah,
okay,
he is
sorry.
very grumpy.
And there were people like stuff like people thought I was trolling, which I kind of was, but I was like, damn, like I wasn't expecting such like a hostile. Like, people were
Yeah,
mad. Like I was just like, damn, dude, like calm down. I'm just kidding. Or well, I was being like, it was one of those weird gray areas where I was kind of like being serious but kind of joking at the same time. It was one of those like
yeah.
strange gray areas, you know?
You're joking, but also making a point.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, the guy freaking disowns a lot of his stuff. Like, calm
Which he
down, Alan.
chooses to sell the rights to. You can't make something of his without his permission or without paying him. You know,
Look, I'm
so
not saying he doesn't have the right to be angry. I'm just saying it's kind of a recurring part of his career.
yeah. I've never read any Alan Moore actually. I've heard League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's very good.
I just read
Um,
that a few years ago. It's pretty good.
yeah, and
If
I'm a
you're a
big
fan of
fan of
like
that kind of
if you're a fan of
yeah,
like
that
old like you know um
public domain characters.
like if you're a fan of like old like Victorian adventurers, you might like it. It's Never
Yeah,
read
I
Watchmen
like that
though.
kind of. No, I've never read Watchmen. I watched the
Wow.
film. I know. It's a miss. I think
Well, if you've
partly,
watched the film, you get the general gist of the story.
and I know what the differences are. Like I know that they
It's an alien
well,
squid. It's not Doctor
yeah,
Manhattan.
Ozymandias makes like an alien squid instead, which like whatever. Um, I didn't see the TV show Watchmen.
It's very good. Or I thought it was very good. I know it was very divisive for a lot of people, which, considering who wrote it, I guess that's par for the course.
Yeah,
Because he made Lost, and well, I don't know if you watched Lost, but you
Lost came out when I was at sixth form college. So when we're like 17, 18, the first series came out, and it was my favorite show. And like every week, it would come out, a new episode would come out, and we'd like meet up at college and discuss it and be like, "Oh man, where do you think the polar bear came from? Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Oh, da, da." And it was on terrestrial TV in the UK. So the UK, we have like 5 main channels. BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, that everyone gets, no matter, like, you don't need to pay any. We need to pay a TV license for the BBC, but you don't need to pay anything to get them. I can't remember which channel it was. I think it was Channel 4. So the first series was on that, and it was electric. And then the second series, I was like, okay, I thought we were going to answer this question, and we haven't. Instead, it's
Yeah,
another
that's
question, and it's like only so much. And then they announced that it was going to Sky, which is like satellite TV, and I didn't have that at the time, so I was like, all right then, I guess I'm not watching anymore. So that was the end of it. And I think J.J. Abrams generally, like, I loved the first series of Westworld. Second series I thought was pretty good, but I wasn't like, whoa, this is incredible. And then the third series, I just stopped watching after the first episode because where are all the cowboys gone, man? Like, yeah. So I think J.J. Abrams is very good at asking questions, but terrible at answering them.
well, that's
Similar to Stephen Moffat in a Doctor Who world. I think he's very good at that as well.
that's kind of a given with J.J. Abrams. And to be honest, I think Lost didn't really do itself a lot of favors. It's like, okay, are you gonna be a character drama with like supernatural elements, or are you gonna be this weird mystery show? Like,
Yeah, but you
pick
think
one or the
about,
other. Don't try to do both.
but they still had to, you know, the writers kept getting renewed because it was making ABC, I think it was, loads of money, like, and they had to write 23 episodes.
I
Like,
don't envy them.
there probably haven't been 23 total episodes of Stranger Things. You know what I mean? Like, now a TV show could come out and it can do 6 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think with TV, I think they tend to be a lot better when they're like streamlined. Like
Oh yeah,
The
but
Sopranos is
like,
like only like 13 episodes per season, so
yeah,
or except for the final one, which was they split it
um,
for whatever reason. I don't know why, but probably for dramatic purposes, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
uh,
but yeah, it's or that's the kind of frustrating thing with like British TV. They'll put out like 3 episodes and then you have to wait 2 years for the next season to come out. I'm like, man,
yeah. It's because
fuck this.
British TV you don't have a writers' room. You just have a guy. It's just a guy. It's just a dude.
It's just a guy. It's just a
Yeah, it
dude.
is. It's just like The Office was just two blokes, and then
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
then it does really really well, and then go off and do other stuff. Like, there's only so much stuff you can write. While like the American Office probably had a writers' room of like 10 people coming in and out, and like,
I
yeah,
mean, it's hard to keep a good tone when you have like 10 people, or a consistent
yeah,
tone, I should say.
yeah.
Um,
Um, and then you get I think it's really hard, especially for like comedy things, where this is where I don't know if you're an MCU fan, but like Thor Ragnarok is
mm.
great, and Thor Love and Thunder is not so good because in Thor Love and Thunder they
Oh man, I grew up in
sacrifice,
that period, man.
yeah,
MCU.
they
I've
they they sacrifice the pathos and the character for a gag. They saw the gag and they were like, we just have to do the gag, and they took the easy option of taking the gag every time. While Thor Ragnarok was funny, it still had the character to it, and you can have characters be funny, but like, I think the idea of, in Thor Love and Thunder in the new Asgard, there's a shop called Infinity Scones that does like desserts,
mm-hmm.
and it's like, that is something that caused the death of half the people in the universe, and you're making a pun name out of it. Like, that wouldn't happen in real life. It's a good gag. You see that now? It's a good gag, but it kind of
Yeah, I felt with like
undermines.
Love and Thunder, they were trying too hard to be funny, and
Yeah,
also they just kind of sped run through the Jason Aaron Thor, which is
yeah,
really great. Like the God Butcher is one of my favorite like comic book arcs of all time. So really disappointing
yeah,
how they did
yeah,
that.
and like,
I'm like, dude, this guy could be like a like straight up like great villain. Like
yeah,
dude could
but
be like a Thanos threat, and like
Yeah.
And I've always had issues with MCU villains because a lot of them. Because I'll admit, I love the MCU. I love what they did, at least when they were in their prime. But the villains often sucked more often than not.
Yeah, I think so. So, um, they took a tactical approach of we have 2 hours of the audience's time. You know the villain is not going to be in the next one,
Uh huh.
but you know the hero is going to be in the next one,
Uh huh.
and the spin-off and whatever. So they would sacrifice time with the villain to make the hero more interesting, which is where DC have failed in the past. You know, going way back to you had Batman came out, the original Tim Burton. I say
Mm.
original. The original was Adam West. Hilarious. Um, have you seen? Oh, the original.
I have seen the old. I've seen some of the old Batman
Ah,
with Burt Ward and Adam West.
yeah. It was shown in the UK quite a lot, and I remember watching the film as a kid with the shark repellent spray, just absolutely hilarious. Um, but yeah, so you had Tim Burton's Batman came out with Jack Nicholson as the Joker, brilliant, and then they did Batman Returns, and the emphasis was on the Penguin and Catwoman, who were brilliant characters. They were more interesting than Batman. That's the thing, is that they sacrificed time with Batman to make the villains more interesting.
You know,
So,
one of my kind of I don't know if this is a spicy take, but Michael Keaton is actually my favorite live action Batman still. Like he just
uh,
I mean, don't get me wrong, like Kevin Conroy is my favorite Batman just ever,
yeah, yeah,
but like I really like how Keaton he really captured the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman very well.
yeah. I thought so. Christian Bale, I thought was a very good Batman, but they didn't do enough of him as Bruce Wayne.
That's interesting. I hear more of the opposite criticism
Ah,
of his. And
yeah,
I really like Pattinson's take. I don't know if you've seen the new Pattinson Batman, but
yeah, yeah. I've seen it. I
I
thought it
just
was.
recently watched The Penguin, and it was phenomenal. I really
I haven't
enjoyed
seen
it.
that yet. Yeah,
Um,
I've got that to watch.
I watched like an episode for my work because I work at my school's newspaper, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this should be fun. You know, I really liked the Batman, and then it was really good. So I'm like, shit, I guess I'm gonna have to get more HBO Max. Oh
I do.
man.
I saw someone who was like, Colin Farrell is an incredibly. He's a handsome man. Like, surely there's enough. Surely there's old, balding, fat actors that could do this job. Like, he's taking people's work.
He's great. He's really great
He's
in it though.
he's completely unrecognizable.
I
Like,
know. He's insane. I mean, in a good way, I think.
yeah,
Though it
you
is
must
kind of
get to
funny
know
they
the.
say that. I'm like, have you seen other movies with Colin Farrell? There's a couple of movies he's been in where they make him look pretty unpleasant. Like
Yeah,
there's this one movie where he plays this guy who's stuck in a in a phone booth, and Kiefer
yeah.
Sutherland plays an assassin. He's basically like screwing with him, and he has like really bad like greasy hair. So, and in Horrible Bosses, I don't know if you ever watched that, but
No, I
like,
never saw Horrible Bosses actually.
but he's basically like balding, just
Yeah.
cokehead guy. So it's like I'm like, hey, Colin Farrell's got range.
Did you ever see? Was it called Tigerland?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I think it's called Tigerland. That with the young Colin Farrell in it. It's a bit like it's set in the Vietnam War.
No,
Um, and it's like all the stuff that went on in Cambodia and things like that. But he was very good in that.
I really like In Bruges a lot.
Yeah, that's
It's probably my favorite movie with Colin
yeah,
Farrell in it.
absolutely hilarious.
Um,
Incredibly quotable with friends, not quotable at all with family.
yeah, no, I wouldn't show my grandmother In Bruges. I'll say that.
No, no. But you could just say she's like, "Oh, I've heard Bruges is very nice." You go, "Yeah, it's like a fairy tale." And she's like, "Oh, I think so," and you're like, "Yeah, I know why."
Yeah. No, it's and like I love the villain in that movie. Ray Fiennes is phenomenal in that. Like just as
He's a
this
brilliant actor.
just
Like,
this great the like I hate to I'm not trying to sound like I'm denigrating the British, but he's like the most British, like
oh, he's
neurotically British crime boss, It's great. I love it.
He's also, it's funny how posh he is in real life. Like you look up his name on Wikipedia and he's got like 5 double barrels in there.
It's pronounced like Rafe Fiennes. I'm like, it's not
Yeah,
Ralph.
Rafe.
I don't get it, but I guess it's a British thing. I don't know.
It's not a British thing. I think it's just a super posh British thing.
Yeah, no, it's really that's a really well cast movie as well. And do you watch Talking Story?
I've seen bits. I don't think I'm a subscriber, but it comes up in my feed kind of fairly
Okay. I was about
regularly.
to say, Jacob talked about In Bruges recently. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a brilliant movie.
Because there's like an older guy who like I watched, and then now he's got like a younger guy on as well.
Yeah,
So
no, it's a guy named Jon
yeah.
Minton, and his son who does all the editing,
Cool.
and he's also appeared in he appears in the videos now.
Yeah. Because I remember watching it, and I was like, okay, cool. This guy's really, and like his channel's exploded. It looks like a
I
talk show.
subscribed to him when he was first starting out, and it was kind of funny. I had him on my podcast right before he blew up, and I actually had him on not too long ago. And I'm like, man, I remember back when you were a scrappy little YouTuber of about 100 subs, but look at you now. You're really making it in the world. It was a weird like proud moment because like I'm still at like 500 subs. My mom's like, hashtag everything, and I'm like, bro, I don't think that's what it is. Like, a lot of this is luck, but I don't know how it works.
It really is.
My mom's probably gonna get mad if she watches this and gets this to this point in the video. She's gonna be like, yeah.
What are you reading right now, Britton?
What am I reading right now? I am reading Eileen by Otasha Moshfegh, which is like a thriller. I don't know if you've ever read or watched The Talented Mr. Ripley at all. It's kind of like that.
Okay. I got The Talented Mr. Ripley from the library. Just
fantastic book.
We adopted kids, and I was just knackered and just didn't read it.
Oh, you adopted? You adopted children?
Yeah, we adopted 2 kids.
Oh.
3 years ago.
Oh, that's. And I am reading The Wizard, which is the second part of this book called The Wizard Knight. So by Gene Wolfe.
Very cerebral.
Yeah. I'm kind of, I hate to say this because I've had friends who've told me to read Gene Wolfe, and I've read, well, now officially 3 books now because I've read The Knight, which is the first one of that series. I'm just starting to think maybe he's just not for me. And don't get me wrong, I like cerebral books. Blood Meridian's one of my favorite books of all time. Really like Lolita a lot. Like I don't mind it, but I don't know. Just it's not meshing is all I'll say for right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fine. I think giving it a couple of books is a good.
I might try Book of the New Sun like as like a last thing, and if that doesn't work, I'll just be like, I give up. This is just not for me.
That's the one that people talk about, right? That's the famous series.
I
know Jimmy Nuts read that.
Jimmy
year?
Nuts. He's a. I was actually, I didn't even realize he was streaming last night until I got home from from my work, and he's just like, hey, doing a stream. I'm like, oh, so I hopped on like an hour in. He's talking about some books.
Yeah. He always comes on as I go to bed.
Yeah, he does like a lot of streaming now, and I'm like, I miss your reviews, bro. And he's like, I know, but they take a lot of effort, man. And I'm like, okay, fine. I don't want to harass you too much about it.
Yeah. It's funny how like before with YouTube, it was like if you have anything over 10 minutes, people aren't going to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I've just realized that I'm okay with being a cult channel at this point. Like, I'm probably not going to get to like that, Philip Chase, Jimmy Nuts level of clout. Dr. Philip Chase, thank you.
Yeah.
That kind of clout.
What a great laugh.
That kind of clout. And I'm fine with that, but there are sometimes I'm like, man, I just feel like I'm not doing enough. And then my mom, again, she's like, you should hashtag everything. I'm like, I don't know if that's it. Like, I hate to I know you're trying to help me, but I don't know if that's it. Maybe it is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
man. I've got like as many subs as I have videos, so I'm not the person to ask about.
That's fair. I'm not.
But
I'll after
I do it for
this,
me.
I'll ask John. I'll be like, so how did you get like all those subscribers in a quick amount of time? And he'd probably be like, I think a lot of it is luck, to be honest with you. That's my grand theory of the universe at the moment.
Yeah, and like it depends what kind of stuff that you do. So for example, like I do most of my videos are book reviews because I read a book and I talk about the book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great because those videos are timeless, completely timeless. So like I've had a video that I did over a year ago, and it just keeps ticking up views all the time, just like every week, just a few more clicks. You know what I mean? Because it's always there.
Yeah, there's some of my videos I've made. I can't think of one in particular at the moment, but like there's a couple of videos I've made where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sure this will be fine. And then it blows up for some reason. You're like, okay,
Yeah, usually the one you put the least amount of effort into, and the one that you put the most amount of effort into does absolutely nothing.
Yeah, like I put out a discussion of Blood Meridian not too long ago. Or actually this was like a year ago. And I was really proud of it. I was like, oh man, this is gonna knock everyone's socks off. And like barely anyone looked at it. I was so sad because I was just like, man. Same thing with like Fahrenheit 451. I had this great conversation with a friend of mine about it, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna blow everyone's socks off. Nothing.
But also, it's quite interesting how people's like. I remember listening to what's his name, Mike, the guy from Texas.
Oh, Mike's book reviews. Yeah,
That's it. Yeah. And he was talking to maybe Dr. Philip Chase. That kind of, I count them as like the upper echelon of BookTube that I see, like that, the cool guys club. And they were still talking like, oh man, like I worked on this and it gets no views, and I'm like, you're like the lowest performing channel video has like more views than my entire channel does. So yeah, you're doing all right. But like they still talk about it. Like it's just the numbers change because it still tells you do a video and it says 10 out of 10, which is not a good thing. You know, and like yeah, I'm here at the plankton level and they're the sharks, but I'm all right with that. I'm just happy doing my own stuff. I have no pressure on, oh, this kind of video has done well. Maybe I should jump on that bandwagon. If I'm interested in it, I do it. If not, then I don't. Like,
yeah. No, I mean, I was recently on Philip's channel for his Dear Doctor Fantasy, which was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
I mean, I had to get up.
Does he have a Discord or like?
I mean, I had to get up at like 9 for it because he's an early bird. But that wasn't fun because I don't like getting up early in the morning. But it was fun talking to him. I actually, I'm hoping I need to send him a photo of myself, so I'm probably gonna do that after the. Yeah. I thought I did already, but I guess not. But anyway, so maybe that'll send some people my way, but maybe not. It's like I was on a oh, there was someone else there was someone else I went on. I'm like, oh man, or actually no, I went on my friend John's channel because he was celebrating getting like 100K subscribers, and we were just hanging out for a couple hours. I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna send people my way. Nobody saw it. Like nobody came, or not. Okay, that's not true. There were a couple people who showed up, and I do appreciate them. But it's just kind of. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I love my subscribers. They're all great. Oh, I accidentally smacked my mic.
Yeah, I think people.
I try not to fret about it too much, but I have anxiety.
What can you control about it?
It's real. I know that's the thing, but like like my freaking anxiety lizard fucking brain just can't help itself. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like every like insecurity I have, my brain just goes like, I'm gonna tickle that a little, make you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, but that as you said, that's your lizard brain. That's the brain that's evolved over millions of years. That emotional reaction you can't control.
No.
What you can control is the split second after the emotional reaction. Okay, now what do I do? Like, yeah, just try and control the controllable. I could control the quality and the number of videos I make and when I release them, and like thumbnails and that kind of thing. Can I control if people watch them? Nope.
There's also the fact, like, I'm like, like, I don't just do, like, fantasy videos. Like, because I know when I started this channel, I'm like, I want to talk about whatever book I want to. I don't want to, because if I just do one genre, I'm just going to get bored. And I'm going to stop doing it. And that's not going to do me very good. I want to do this as long as I can. So, like, I do some videos about, like, crime stuff, and, like, barely anyone watches it because, crime doesn't have, like, a big following on BookTube for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Though there are some people like Brian Lee Durfee and StoryTube who cover it.
Criminally does a lot of crime.
Oh,
well.
yeah, he does. His videos are a lot better put together than mine are. Because I'm just sitting here in front of my screen and just kind of talking. Because I'm like Brian Lee Durfee. Plus, I'm lazy. I don't like doing a bunch of editing. Like, I'll do some editing, but I don't like doing a bunch of it. I'll save that for, like, people who enjoy doing that stuff. Like,
I don't know if anyone enjoys editing. I don't. But
well, I don't want to get hate comments, Tim.
if you enjoy editing, please comment below and like and subscribe. Thank you.
Yeah.
And volunteer.
And also, like, I do a lot of these, like, conversations, and they tend to go on for a while, and there are people who do watch them, and I it's always fun. I enjoy, I'll admit these are the things I'm usually most proud of because I enjoy doing these. Putting my journalism skills into use. So there's that too. But yeah, like, not everyone watches them, especially if it's like an indie author who,
Yeah, I'm planning on reading 2 self-published books this month.
I've been slowly dipping my toes in. Like, I read Philip's
read a
books, Dr. Philip Chase. I have them right there. Read
yes.
them this year. I had conversations with him about it, so that was fun. And I've read a couple of others. I can't think of them at the moment.
Yeah, I've not read much, and everything I have read, I don't know. I feel like I'm just judging it harsher because I'm like, I know you haven't been through the gatekeepers of traditional publishing. But I have had this month. I actually had an author reach out to me and say, "Hey, would you be happy to read and review my book?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And it's a horror short story anthology, and for someone who's never read any horror, it'll be interesting. So
yeah, and it's kind of fun seeing books like blow up on BookTube. Like The Spear Cuts Through Water blew up a while back, which surprised me because I read the Amazon sample and it's a very strange experimental book. So it's really odd what captures the BookTube zeitgeist at the moment.
yeah, yeah, and everyone seems to love Sun Eater, but also to not really like Sun Eater.
I've heard a lot of like mostly positive things, but I've had like good friends of mine who just absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Or
they're like, oh, it gets really good at like book 3.
I hate that.
And you're like,
I hate that. Oh man.
And it's so like, I think a good example, because you have like no one hates the thing more than the fans. Like, we all know that.
Uh-huh.
Like,
imagine being a Star Wars fan. Oh my god.
Oh geez, yeah. But let's take Song of Ice and Fire, for example. George. I think it's fairly agreed. Obviously, people have different opinions, but A Storm of Swords, the 3rd book, is the best book. It's like, it's perfection. It's so good.
Yeah.
And then people go, oh, well, Feast of Crows wasn't as good. Dance of Dragons wasn't as good. So people think, oh, God, I have to read this like Game of Thrones. A Game of Thrones is like, I don't know, 700-800 pages, and then so I have to read 3 of those to like get to the good bit. No, like the first book is so good.
First book's my favorite. That's my spicy take of the day.
I think Storm of Swords. I think all of them are good. I really liked all of them. And I love how, because the books are so broad and so vast, you can find characters that you're interested in. And I love Victorian Greyjoy. I think he's super cool, just going out, being a Viking, doing all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get lots of time with him in Dance with Dragons, I think it is. And I really enjoyed that. I think now, I think we will get Winds of Winter.
Yeah, I've just I don't know if we're getting spring. Dream of
We're
Spring.
not going to get spring.
We're probably not going to.
We're not going to get. The only way we would get it would be if we have a Christopher Tolkien situation with the Silmarillion, where George has written so much stuff that he's cut and trimmed and tried to do somewhere else, or because he's trying to figure this out. That someone will go through his notes and be like, "Oh, okay, I could see where A Dream of Spring was going," and finish it off, like with the Wheel of Time,
Oh God. With the Wheel of Time, I've never. It's kind of funny. I talk about this with my friend Matt a lot, but I've never really been drawn to the Wheel of Time.
I read the first one at the start of this year, and I thought it was bang average.
I thought you were gonna say it was bad. I was like, oh well.
No, I don't think it was bad. Man, it was long. It felt long. It was a lot of just walking.
Was it interesting walking, or was it just walking?
No, not especially. And so I thought, but it was okay. I watched the TV show, and I thought the TV show was pretty good. I thought the second series of the TV show was better. Again, they tried to do a mystery box. Who's going to be the guy? And that kind of didn't really add anything. But I've got the second one on Kindle because I got it for a cheap deal. So I'm looking to read the second one because people say, again, just get through the first one and then after that it's good. I do think that the reason why it is so beloved is because a whole generation of people, it was what they read when they were 13.
Yeah, I don't really like that argument because I don't want to denigrate on people's reading taste. If you like it, that's great. It's just you know. But yeah, I think you might have a point there. I have a friend who really likes it, and I'm like, yeah, you like Wheel of Time? He's like, well, it was my first fantasy series, so get out of here.
Yeah. But I do think they must so Sam Harrison, he's reading them all this year.
Oh yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah.
And he's loving them. And he's has read tons of fantasy, and he's not 13. So
he's not 13.
Yeah. So I think.
No, I mean,
I'm certainly willing to give the second one a go.
It's hard to describe my fantasy taste because it kind of goes all over the place. But I guess I like more literary or literary, whatever the hell that even means, or cerebral, something that tries something interesting.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, I won't pretend it's the most original thing in the world. I mean, it's kind of like War of the Roses, Lord of the Rings, and King Arthur just kind of meshed.
It's just War of the Roses, basically.
Yeah.
With some stuff going on in Marine. York Lancasters, Stark Lannisters.
And there's a lot of, but I really like how it commentates on the fantasy genre and how it kind of is an exploration of the genre, as well as what if a fantasy world like Middle Earth were real? What would that look like? Which I mean, I guess you could say Middle Earth has a kind of realism to it, but but with Westeros, it feels like a real world that has lived in. You know?
100%. Yeah.
Which there are other fantasy stuff that's like that, but or even First Law, which First Law is not the most original thing in the world. I mean, it's taking a lot of fantasy archetypes and playing with them, but there's a lot of social, great characters and great social satire, which barely anyone talks about. I'm often just baffled when people are like, "Oh, great characters." I'm like, yes, you're right, but there's a lot of really good political satire in these books that you're not talking about.
I quite like I think the fantasy genre has the opportunity more than other genres to provide characters who are kind of have a fable-like quality to them, and the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling to have like almost like a fairy tale, a fable-like quality, where it's like, yeah, that's not realistic, but who cares? It's a good story. Like you do need, I think there's definitely space in the fantasy genre for that realistic. It doesn't have to be grimdark, you know. It doesn't have to be like, oh man, I'm so bad. I murdered a load of people. I'm so bad. Look at me. I'm so edgy. You know, not everyone has to be like that.
Oh no.
But but like I like how fantasy provides the idea of this kind of fable-like quality to storytelling. So I read a book. I finished it this year, early this year. It's called Legend of the Condor Heroes by Jin Yong, and it was written via newspaper column um, in the 1950s in Hong Kong, and has been actually it was huge in Hong Kong and China, and it sold as much as Lord of the Rings did in the West,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's just recently been translated. So, and that it's one story, but it's split into 4 volumes, and it is 4 volumes of the same story, like
So
almost
it's
mid sentence
so
that
it's a
cuts off, and
series,
then it's just it's 4 books,
but they put
but
it
it's
in like an
one.
omnibus.
No, it's a full novel. So
Oh,
like,
okay.
um, but
So it's kind of like Strange and Norrell, where there's like three, you know.
yeah,
Okay,
it's like
okay.
if you read Strange, like, or in the UK, the Stormlight Archives books have been split into 2 just because they're too big. So
Mm.
like it's like that. It's one story split up. So there's no recounting of who the characters are or anything like that in the second book. It just carries on going, and that is up there with my favorite fantasy series. It's all set in like 1200 China, where like Genghis Khan is about to invade, and there's no it's fantasy in that there's no elves or dwarves or magical races or magical creatures or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that, but it's about kung fu is like the magic. So people could do crazy things with kung fu. Like one man masters his chi so much that he could just like get rid of the poison after he's been bitten by a poisonous snake. Stuff like that.
So
And it just adds
like those old like martial arts movies, like or what's it
Crouch
called?
Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
haven't
like
seen
that.
that movie, but that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's like that, but in a book, and it kind of inspired all of that genre of literature and
What's it called? Like
filmmaking.
Wu Chi? My friend
Wuxia,
Matt
wuxia.
Wuxia. Thank you. I was
Yeah,
about to say
it's
you can
like the
say it in the
first.
comments if I butchered it. I apologize.
I've also possibly butchered it, but so that is a book. Yeah, I finished. That's a story that I finished earlier this year, and that one I'm going to be rereading the start of it in January for a read along, to kind of try and get other people to read it because I just think it's brilliant. And it has like a fable that has a fable like quality to it, and it's just so cinematic. Like it starts off and there's just like these 2 guys, and this other guy turns up in the middle of the snowstorm, and he's like, "I've heard you guys can fight," and they're just like,
That actually sounds pretty awesome.
"Yeah," and the way it's written is like, "Oh, blah blah blah, launched into the fighting technique, 1,000 rapids rolling down the hill. Oh, and he countered that with fierce mountain against the storm." Like that's just all it says. So you could just like imagine what those kung fu moves look like, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's yeah, you said you were saying earlier about Will of Time. I
Yeah,
remember Matt. I don't know if you watched Matt's fantasy book reviews, but he made a video
yeah,
talking about kind of his spicy takes on fantasy. And he talked about how he felt like the Lord of the Rings books, people only like them that because of like nostalgia because they grew up reading them.
yeah.
And I'll admit, I was a little vexed when I heard it, and I've thought about making like a video response, but I'm like, because I want to get along with everyone on BookTube. I get along with mostly everyone on BookTube, so you kind of have to be careful with videos like that, or at least I'm trying to.
I think you can be opinion, like you can respectfully disagree. You know what I mean?
Now, I
Um,
mean, I'm gonna, do my best and do my homework and get them right, because like the last thing I want is people go like, well, you're just misquoting him, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
You watch the video, it's right there. But I watched that and I was a little mad. I'm like, that's not the only reason people like Lord of the Rings, dude.
No.
what
No.
what a bad take. But anyway,
Especially because people. There have been.
where do you think
So
Song of Ice and Fire in the first law came from? Like, come
Yeah,
on, dude.
and Lord of the Rings was printed in like the 50s,
Uh-huh.
so 70 years ago now.
It
It,
also it
give or take.
also his Conan
Other,
review also irritated me a bit. So,
I've never read any Conan. I'd like to. My
well,
only knowledge of Conan is the clip of the film where he punches a camel in the face. It's pretty funny.
well, there are these books from Del Rey that there are 3 volumes. Get those, because those are the
Okay.
ones Robert E. Howard wrote, and nobody.
It's a German. That's a German three
Yeah.
there.
I was thinking of that scene in Inglorious Bastards where
Yeah,
he
yeah,
puts them up like that,
yeah.
and
It's so
I
good.
didn't get that till like recently,
Oh,
because
really?
my friend Matt on Books lives in Germany, and he's like, yeah, it's this in Germany, and I'm like, that's what that meant, like, because I
Yeah.
didn't get that. I was like, wait, the finger signal didn't, like, how did that give him away? I'm like, now I realize it. So it's pretty funny. But
Yeah.
anyway, um,
But yeah, I think Lord of the Rings has been around for 75 years, give or take, and since in that time, dozens, hundreds, thousands of fantasy series have come and gone in that time,
yeah, they've
and it stayed.
mimicked it, or
I read The Silmarillion this year. I've
oh,
never read it
really?
before. I tried. So with Lord of the
I'm a
Rings,
little
I read The
intimidated
Hobbit.
by the Cimmerillion.
I read it this year, and it took me a while. It's not it's not like a thrilling page turner Dan Brown style book. You know what I mean? Um, but I found it an incredibly spiritual experience. It was almost like a religious experience for me, really, in terms of how it kind of touches your soul. Because the Silmarillion is a story about the end of things and the fall of great, great empires to evil. Like the bad guys win a lot. Um, and it was full of like a chapter of it would be like could be a whole story, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where a lot of the Berith and Luthien and the fall of Numenor and whatever those like follow-on books that have come out recently, they're just like the bits of still expanded with more notes. um,
And yeah, I mean, I won't say like Lord of the Rings is like my favorite fantasy of all time. It's like, I mean, it's in my top 10. It's like number like 9. So
yeah,
it's up
I'd
there.
probably say it was my favorite. Like again, I read The Hobbit when I was 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I tried to read Lord of the Rings when the films came out and bounced off it because I was like 14, 15. And then read it in my late teens, early 20s, and was like, holy moly. Um, yeah, and I haven't reread it. I'd like to. I might listen to the audiobooks on that because I've heard they're really good, the Andy Serkis ones. Um, yeah, I just reading the Silmarillion, I was like, wow, this is good.
It
Like,
was it was kind of funny when the Andy Serkis Lord of the Rings audiobooks came out, because my friend Raph kind of got mad. He's like, they're just gonna associate too much with the movies, and I was like, dude, like it doesn't even matter. But okay, whatever. If like he's doing his thing.
yeah,
I'm sure
the
he'll
movies are.
comment.
I don't know why you would not want to associate with the movies, especially the original Lord of the Rings movies. They're brilliant. One thing that's interesting with those is Hollywood definitely learnt the wrong lesson out of those.
Mm-hmm.
So, Peter Jackson with those films spent 2 years in pre-production,
Mm-hmm.
like making all the sets, doing all the costumes, everything. And with every film they had new technology. Second film you had Gollum,
Mm-hmm.
incredible technology, a full CG character, and then the third one Gollum had improved, and you had these huge battle scenes. And
Mm-hmm.
Peter Jackson then made Weta Digital, who is now like the number one VFX artist company in the world. They do
Mm-hmm.
Avatar and all kinds of stuff. But like the majority of the films are just the main actors with either really tall people or really short people, and you just don't show the faces. Like, it's so low tech.
Like,
You know what I mean?
there are a couple, like, some of the effects are a little wonky. Like, I remember
Yeah,
I rewatched it not too long ago, and the scene where um Frodo says, "I will take the ring to Mordor," and he like walks up. I think it looks a little weird. Like, it's
yeah.
just, it's like,
The
I was like,
worst one was in, I think it's the third one, Return of the King, where Merry and Pippin are like in the battle, and they're like, there's a scene where they're on a horse or something, and it just really stands out. Like,
I
but
didn't even
otherwise,
notice that.
yeah, but the majority of the shots are
Oh
either
yeah, no,
false
there a lot of them
perspective,
are practical.
like
I think
yeah,
a lot
false
of it's like
perspective.
perspective. I think.
Yeah, or they just hired a really really tall bloke and some short people. So and then they just show the back of their heads. It's so low tech. But Hollywood was like, that means we can make everything in CG. And now like you got VFX artists being burnt out and terrible CG in all these films that like
Oh, yeah, I saw Love and Thunder, and there's that scene where he's talking to Heimdall's
the floating
son, and it's just
the
like, oh my
floating head.
god,
Yeah,
dude, what is
yeah.
that? What is this?
What is that?
Stuff like that.
Um, yeah,
And then look at the like VFX from like Infinity War and Endgame. They look incredible.
yeah,
Like, you know, Thanos looks great. Swole, as the kids like to say.
yeah. I will not say that because I have kids. I'm getting into old man yells at cloud territory. That's where I'm heading.
I mean, I don't know how old you are, but it's we're in an interesting
I'm
time.
36.
You're
36.
36. You have gray hairs already. What? How long?
Oh yeah, I went grey 28, 29.
Oh wow. Yeah, I'm getting gray hairs already in my.
Yeah, I've still got it though. That's the thing. A lot of my friends and colleagues, you know.
I thought you were in like your like maybe like early 40s maybe. Sorry, man.
Okay, that's not too bad. I've always looked older than I am. I've always looked, and I'm just tired all the time. That doesn't help.
That's
But
fair. It's the world will take a lot out of you, man.
yeah, especially when you have kids.
I
You were
don't have
like, oh
kids.
man,
I don't have
yeah,
kids yet, but
no. When you were like, oh man, 9 o'clock, that's so early. I'm like,
wait, when do you get up in the morning?
well, my kids are very good, and we get up like between 7 and 7:30 every day.
Okay,
And my kids are very good. Like other people's kids wake up at 5 a.m.
yeah. No,
Like,
I'm not quite at that age of my life yet where 9 o'clock in the morning is actually late.
oh
So
no, I'm a night owl.
I
Like
am
I
also a
naturally,
night owl.
yeah. So when you were like, oh, can we do this time? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm still up at that time. I'm still up and like kicking and ready to go. And
That's good. I'm like, oh man, I don't know your time, man.
yeah, yeah, no, this is good for me. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, the world is not built for night owls. The world is built for morning people.
Yeah, I'm like, Philip, I'm glad you can get up at like 9 in the morning. You're ready to go, because like there were a couple of the Edan ones I did, and I'm like, okay, it took me a minute to like wake up, and he's like, oh,
Yeah,
he's like, you just woke up, huh? And I'm like, yeah, 15 minutes ago. It's like I can tell because I would like zone out before we started, and I was like, oh yeah,
yeah.
we got to do this. No, like I can do it. I just don't like doing it.
Oh yeah. Um,
I see you read comics on your channel as well, which I also do. I'm really bad at like reviewing them because books tend to take a lot of the time, but
yeah, I read them. I don't read them religiously by any stretch.
it's fair. All right, yeah.
But I do. I read them kind of when I come across them in a way, or now like with my kids, I read to them. So like read quite like my son. Both of my kids love superheroes. So I read a load of Spider-Man comics early this year, but they were all special edition covers. So they were all like, what if Disney characters were like it's Mickey Mouse as Captain America, and like they were the special edition covers. So like you've got Miss Marvel and there's Daisy Duck as Miss Marvel and all kind of stuff, which were really
Oh
cool.
dear, I can't. I don't know if I want to imagine Mickey as Captain America.
But it's just the front covers. Then inside it's like the normal
Makes you
Spider-Man
wonder who
comic.
Spider-Man is.
Yeah, some of the covers are really good. Some of them are a bit ropey, but they're all like famous. So like the original Avengers #1 cover, or
Oh,
the Incredible Hulk #1 cover. So it's like an iconic cover. But yeah, so I read those, and I've read a couple of years ago. I read Life Story, Spider-Man Life Story, which is
I have that.
fantastic.
I haven't read that yet, but I do have it over
Oh, it's
here.
so good. It's so good.
I might do that in 2025 actually.
Yeah, like you can read it. Like I think it's six issues, so super quick read.
Big Spider-Man guy.
Yeah, and if you know your Spider-Man stuff, like you know what's gone on in the past, because it's a world set in a universe where Spider-Man is allowed to grow up. So there's like a story from each of the decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, 2010s. So he gets 10 years older, like every time. And it's the story of what's going on. So like there's one in the 90s and it's about the Clone Saga. So if you know about the Clone Saga, you're like, okay, cool. But obviously it's only one issue, so it's not like yeah. So it was I really enjoyed that. I read mainly I only read Marvel stuff, really. I grew up reading Marvel comics. Never really touched DC. Like
I mean, I'm really bad at like I don't know what I would recommend for kids because I generally like more dark depraved comics, I guess.
yeah.
Like stuff that's probably not meant for children.
Yeah.
But like Bone, maybe you read Bone to them if you want.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Bone.
I haven't read Bone, but I've heard it's a good one.
Yeah, my son loves Miles Morales, and my daughter loves Gwen Stacy, like Ghost Spider, like Spider Gwen. So like, got a few of them. I've actually got a load of comics that we got from my brother-in-law, which are like 90s Spider-Man comics. So I might give those to him, like for him to read through himself. Yeah,
There's also Ultimate Spider-Man, but it's pretty
yeah,
long. So
but that's just coming back now. So
no, I mean like the Bendis one from like
the
a long
Bendis
time
run, yeah.
ago. That's very good. Um, I think kids can read it just fine.
Yeah.
It's been a
We
while.
watched the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man with them.
Oh
this
man,
year.
those films I watched those when I was a kid. Those are great.
They're so good. Tobey Maguire has such weird energy. That's Peter Parker.
I was about to say I thought he was a great Peter Parker. Like he captured that like shy kind of
Like he
awkward
is.
kid very
He
well.
comes in and he's like, "Sorry, Aunt May, I feel sick," and then he walks off. It's so bizarre.
Oh man,
and,
I hope
it's
have you guys gotten to Spider-Man 3?
No, we've just done one. We'll do two.
Okay. So I'll say, if you think he's weird in the first one, like,
oh yeah, three was awful.
No, I mean it's
Two. I think Spider-Man 2 is still one of, if not the best comic book movies.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites though. I mean, Dark Knight is my favorite one.
Yeah, I get that.
I probably wouldn't show that to your kids until they're a little older.
No.
Don't be like me who watched it when I was like 8.
Oh wow, yeah.
I didn't really get a lot of the adult stuff that was going on, but like oh cool battle stuff, Joker, that's fun.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Christopher Nolan films? Or?
I do. I am a fan of his movies. The only one I haven't really liked was like Tenet.
I never saw Tenet actually, because I think it was COVID when it came out, so I just didn't go to the cinemas to watch it. My favorite is The Prestige.
Oh, that's mine too. That isn't The
Oh,
Dark
good.
Knight. Like, I keep telling people The Prestige is awesome.
It's so good.
Like, Inception's like really good and all, but like The Prestige, man, like it's so good.
The thing that I don't like about Inception, hot take, is that Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who like runs this team of like thought stealing people, he has like it's his fault that stuff keeps going wrong because he's got all this hang-ups about his wife.
Yeah.
So like you're the worst person to lead this team. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, it's like the equivalent of having like, hey, I've set up Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, cool. What's your name? Jack Daniels. You know what I mean? It's like you're the liability on this team. Why are you
He just
leading this team?
passes out Jack to
You
everyone.
just yeah, like you're bad at your job, but you're like, why did you get this job?
Oh, that's good.
Compared to the Prestige, where they're both brilliant magicians. Like,
Yeah, like man, you know, well, I know they made a series of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but like, man,
yeah,
Christopher
I haven't
Nolan
watched that
could have
yet.
made a good Strange and Norrell adaptation.
Yeah, I remember watching it because like I'm a big fan of Hugh Jackman generally. Like,
Oh yeah, he's great.
just seems a top dude. Um, and I remember watching The Prestige with my mum, who's also a big Hugh Jackman fan, and we watched it and right we finished, and she was like, "So, so Hugh Jackman wasn't the good guy," and I was like, "Neither of them were the good guy," and that's what I loved about it. I love that
Also,
rivals like
one of my favorite twists in a movie as well,
yeah
especially with Bale's character.
yeah because it's so simple.
Yeah, and it's like right in front of your face the whole time, and you're just like,
Oh yeah,
you're not paying attention. Like
I
one
read
of
that book last year, I think. The
oh, was it
book's not
good?
as good as the film. The book's not as good as the film, but it is good in. It's interesting in how it's told. Um, in that you do the whole thing from one perspective and then the whole thing from another perspective. So you kind of see the events. It doesn't go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You see the whole thing from one side and the whole thing from the other. And it's actually the framing narrative is a bit strange because it's like they're distant relatives. It's like 100 years. It's like modern times, and
Mm-hmm.
they're finding all the records and stuff. Um, and then they go to the. I'm trying not to spoil the film for people, but they go to where the film ends, where Hugh Jackman's character ends. They go to that place at the end of the book, and there's still all of it there. And they're like, whoa, man! And it's like they're all in the caves of the guy's house, of Hugh Jackman's character's house. That's where they keep them all, rather than under the stage. Um,
Yeah, it gets real
uh,
freaky there towards,
yeah,
especially when it gets to the how he does the magic trick.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, but no, I think that's my favorite.
That analogy
Nolan.
about Inception's great. I like that. You know, Inception's kind of like Fight Club for me. I mean, it's good, but like I'm kind of just sick of the impact of it. You know, where it's like,
Yeah, I saw Fight Club when I was like 14, 15 and didn't get it. I thought it was like, oh, cool. Like, oh, why are they blowing up stuff now? What? Um, yeah. So I kind of,
like it's
I
good
wouldn't
at
mind.
what it's doing, but it's just kind of like, bro, Prestige is like, I
Yeah,
think like another step. It's like a step above, I think.
yeah,
And
um, yeah. And it shows like the different aspects of magic, like the trick versus the presentation of the trick.
mm-hmm, yeah,
Um, and you think that Christian Bale's character is not good at the presentation of the trick, but actually he's incredible at the presentation of the trick and what he goes through to keep the presentation of the trick. Like, yeah,
mm-hmm, yeah. No, it's
I like reading about rivalries. I think rivalries are really interesting. So like I love Hamilton, the show,
uh,
because of Hamilton and Burr. Like Burr's my favorite character.
mm.
Um,
They were gonna say Hamilton and Jefferson because they didn't get along. They infamously
yeah, they
didn't
didn't
get
get along,
along.
but I think Hamilton and Burr are like they have different ways of going about things,
Mm-hmm,
like how they think about things. So Hamilton goes in guns blazing, while Burr is patient and waits,
mm-hmm,
and he's very conscious of what other people think of him. while Hamilton doesn't care what other people think of him. So he keeps taking risks. Like from Burr's perspective, this guy, very smart, keeps taking risks and keeps winning. Like he's like at a roulette table and betting everything on red every time and keeps winning. And Burr's like being patient, and then it's not like Burr's not winning, even though he's playing the game right. Like he's making friends, he's working his way up,
So have
and
you
then
seen like Amadeus?
I'd love to see Amadeus. Like I really want to see Amadeus. I've seen clips of it, like
Oh, I was about
where
to say that's what I'm like. If you like rivalries, you'll really
yeah,
well. It's a one-sided rivalry because Mozart's pretty oblivious to the fact that Salieri doesn't like him, but
yeah.
it's a
I've
great
seen the
movie.
clip where he just like finds the music and just plays it. Like, oh, I could just you just play it once, and then I'll pick it up. I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, um,
um,
yeah,
what I can see now why you probably like why you like Strange and Norrell because
yeah. I wanted more of that.
yeah.
Like,
Though I
because
guess it's a
Stranger
little more
Norrell,
complicated because like they're not rivals at first.
yeah,
They're friends, and
yeah,
then they split up because well Norrell's a pain in the ass, but
yeah,
but
yeah.
and then
That's something I probably wanted
and then they
more of.
get back
Is the
together.
yeah. But it just, I think, with Strange and Norrell, in terms of characters, it felt like you were reading biographies of two real people
hmm
because they're full of contradictions and they're just very fully rounded characters.
I'll be honest, I kind of thought it was gonna be like a gay romance at first for some reason. I'm like, a woman's writing this and takes place in. I mean, they were real repressed back in the Napoleonic era, so I'm like,
Yeah,
nope. As far as I know, no. Anyway, I don't know about Norrell. He's doing his thing over there. And Strange
yeah.
is he's got a wife, so
Wow, that didn't stop a lot of people. You know, Freddie Mercury and Elton John were married to
that's
women,
true.
so
That's true.
you know,
Well, they don't. Well, they don't. They don't. They're not. I don't think they're. As far as I'm aware, I don't think they're gay. Well,
no,
I don't
no, I
think
don't think that.
Strange is anyway. Norrell, I'm
I
not so
no, I
sure.
think I think I read it as Norrell being on the autistic spectrum,
Yeah,
like
he's probably on there somewhere.
um, but I do think my favorite character was Childermass, the guy who works for Norrell. I just think,
One of my like favorite moments of like Norrell being an ass is like he gets all those books at that auction, and
oh,
then
he
he just
doesn't
like
talk.
and then he just walks past Strange's wife. Just I'm like that's so petty. It's great.
And then he's like, "Well, people are expecting me to share them. Well, that's never happened before. So why are people expecting it now?"
Yeah, no, it's also interesting because it's like both of them have a point on a level because it's like
Yeah,
Norell's worried about like English magic, if this falls into the wrong hands, it's gonna get bad. And
yeah,
you see with Strange that when you use magic recklessly, things are gonna go wrong. But at the same time, it's like Strange is right that like yeah, maybe we should share this with more people because it's like hoarding it for yourself does not look good.
yeah,
It's going to alienate people, which is what happens.
yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. So I'd love to see Amadeus.
Um,
That's one thing I really want to watch.
yeah, Childermass is really good though. I really like him. One of the fun moments in the book is like when it turns out, kind of minor spoilers, I guess, that he can use magic. And I remember
Yeah,
texting my friend. I'm like, "Wait, I thought it was just them two. He can use it," and he's like, "Yeah."
he's like, yeah, I've picked up a few things from Mr. Norrell. Uh, and then you've got Vinculus, who, not to get into spoilers, um, is both a charlatan and a magician.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I like how they kind of play with it. I'm like, yeah, he is kind of scamming people, but, like, it is shown, like, he does have genuine ability,
Hmm.
you know?
Um,
Which is fun. I enjoy it. It was neat seeing, like, an academic take on magic. Because, like, generally I'm not a fan of the idea of magic as, like, science, you know?
yeah,
Like that kind of Brandon Sanderson kind of magic. But, like,
yeah,
I really like how Clark plays with it in Strange and Norrell.
and it's, as the reader, you don't understand the science of it.
No.
Like, it's incredibly soft magic system.
Oh, yeah.
So I like that you can have a soft magic system in an academic environment. Like,
And like even like Strange and Norrell fumbling around trying to figure
yeah,
out what this is.
yeah. And again, it fits into that early realm of science, you know. So like at that
I
point in
mean, yeah, I
history,
mean, what is science? I mean, it's just a bunch of guys fumbling around trying to
yeah,
figure out how this stuff works.
yeah,
You know?
and at that point, they had in the periodic table hadn't been invented yet, and people were still like at that point. I think they thought there was an element called phlogiston, which just meant was in things, and that's what burnt. They were like, oh, that burnt, therefore that has some phlogiston in it, like this
Never
extra
heard of
element.
this. Never
Yeah, it's
heard of
really
this.
interesting, that kind of early period of science, because again, it was very similar to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell in that the scientists weren't necessarily academic. They were just rich people who had access to equipment and
Yeah.
books. Like, oh, it was the Baron Timothy von Musul in Germany, who was just this crazy man, this half-wit son of a baron who had access to all the money and equipment to go do stuff. Like, it's
Well, I
really
mean, I
interesting.
guess when you have a bunch of money and you don't really know what to do with it, you're just
Yeah,
kind of you're just trying to. I mean, that's the thing with Strange. Like early when we meet him in the book, he's just a rich guy trying to figure out what he wants to do because
yeah,
he's got all this money. He doesn't have to work, so he's like, what am I gonna do with my time?
yeah. Let's find a hobby.
And he's like, oh, magic. Okay, yeah. This weird homeless guy came and told me I'm gonna be a magician. So all right, let's do that.
Yeah, that guy when went on and probably gave that same card to another 50 people that day.
I do like the tarot cards that the Childermass plays with.
That's a really good scene with the tarot cards, where they all just turned to the Raven King. I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah, and it's like I'm a big like world building, lore nut. Like I really love that stuff in fantasy books,
Mm.
and like Strange and Norrell just has tons of it. I'm like, oh my god, this is great. I wish more fantasy
Yeah,
novels did this.
I love how like it's really hard to write fantasy in a secondary world and explain the rules to the reader when all the characters already know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, that's very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read some self pub stuff where like I read one where literally the first or second chapter. I think the first chapter is like, oh, here's the farm girl, and she's got some power and she doesn't understand it. And the second chapter, she goes to school and learns the history. And like, oh, this. Everyone knows this is when the kingdom of blah 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 invaded this blah blah blah. And I'm like,
Not a
ah,
fan of info dumping.
no.
I'm not either.
Um,
But
I
Strange and
loved
Norrell does it really interestingly because again they have the footnotes. I don't know how
yeah.
they did the footnotes in the audiobook. Did they just read
He
them?
literally was just like, oh, and then Jonathan Strange did this. Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, published the life of Jonathan Strange, published by blah blah blah, 1816, and then he would just carry on talking. Like,
Okay, that's all right. I because I didn't
so
listen
it
to the
was,
audio because
yeah,
I
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
So it was fine, but
um
like I think the footnotes was a really good way of
yeah, it
telling the
felt like a
reader,
genuine like academic text.
yeah.
They're like whoa.
I love. Have you read? I don't know if you have. But have you read Fourth Wing?
I read the first like couple chapters
Yeah.
and then
So
I thought it was nonsensical, so I stopped reading it.
yeah, yeah.
Like none of it
My
made
my
sense, so I just stopped. Yeah.
my sister-in-law bought it for me, um, and I read it last year, and yeah, it was. I did not enjoy it. Let's just say that. But yeah, in terms of exposition, where like it starts and they have to walk across the parapet into the school. That's like the first exam. They have to like walk in a straight line over a bridge. That's the first test. And she's like, oh, when I'm nervous, I just think about to take my mind off it. I just think about all the history of the land. And she literally just starts being like, So the equivalent of, so Oklahoma is the whatever state of the USA, and it was founded in blah blah blah, and the capital is blah blah blah, and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, oh my god, this is a published like novel, and
No,
it has
my
the worst exposition
no
I've ever read.
my favorite part when I read it, just of terms of badness, was when
Mm.
she sees the guy at the
The hot
end.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be that guy she warned him about. It's gonna be that
yeah,
guy. It's gonna
yeah,
be, and then she says it's that guy. I'm like, oh man, I got it right, And I'm like, all right,
yeah,
I gotta stop reading
yeah,
this.
yeah. I loved how, so she's called Violet Sorengale. Brilliant, brilliant name. You got Zayden Ryerson. Oh, that's cool. Then you got Jack Barlow. It's just a bloke. You know what I mean? It's like having Lord of the Rings, where you're like, oh, we go to the elves. You've got Galadriel and Celeborn and Legolas and Terry.
An elf named Terry sounds like one of those like joke books.
Yeah,
You know?
and it's just like, oh man, what is up with this?
No, it's yeah, it's
But
kind of
good,
funny. It's like you meet like Eddard, Jamie, Ramsay Bolton, and then like Jerry.
yeah,
This guy named Jerry. You're like, what the hell? That's not right.
yeah,
No, but it's just like where I gave up on it, I'm like, the world building doesn't make sense. One, okay, here's, if you don't mind me complaining a little bit. One, why the hell do they let actual traitors, or the children of traitors, A, be in your army, and B, control freaking weapons of mass destruction that are the
yeah,
dragons?
yeah,
And B, why are you killing off everyone? Look, I know that they did it in like Soviet Russia back in the day. But that's not a good way to do things.
yeah,
That doesn't
yeah.
make any sense. Like, there's a reason that they have positions in the army, Like, if you're not cut out for, like, shooting things and being in the field, you can do other things.
Yeah.
I pointed that out in my video where I was like, yeah, I'm not reading this anymore.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of the you got the traitors. So
But the one that really
tried to
bothered me
overthrow the
though
government.
was the traitors. They let the children of traitors back in the military, or they be in the military, and they also, another great idea, give them access to basically like the fantasy equivalent of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it's giving the equivalent, like it's giving the January 6th rioters nukes. That's what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Or like,
and then they also
giving the
have
Confederates like assault rifles. It's like,
yeah,
what do you think's going to happen?
Later in the book, you discover that there's like a rule that only 3 of the rioters' kids are allowed to meet at the same time. Otherwise, it's illegal. And it's just like, what a completely unenforceable law. What if they all get on the same bus? What happened?
I didn't get that far.
Yeah. What do they have to do? You have to walk around like this, being like, I'm walking into the room. If anyone else is in the room, they have to leave. What if they all need the toilet at the same time? What, like, just completely. And then she's like, the main character, Violet's like, oh man, I kept your secret because I let you guys meet and like, oh, I know your secrets. It was just dreadful. But
oh man.
And then like you look at the map, and the map has got all of the places, and you're like, okay, cool, and you don't go to any of those places.
One of the things I like about Game of Thrones is how it infuses the history of the world through the characters. Like it feels like the characters lived through this part of history. It's just like a thing that happened.
And like,
I don't know how George R. I mean, I think that's the best type of world building, is when it just kind of naturally flows with the. Oh, I smacked my mic again. I hope no one heard that. But like, I think that's the best kind of world building, when you just kind of infuse it with the story.
Yeah, because people have just lived it, and like you think with Game of Thrones, the book starts, 10, 15 years after the interesting thing happened,
mm-hmm.
after the rebellion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, um,
And you
it's
still,
like,
but you can feel the effect of that, even though we don't see
oh
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know.
Right. And yeah, the idea of the main, the king was a great rebel, but a terrible king.
Uh-huh.
Really interesting. Um, yeah. Oh man, that's so good. That's so good.
No,
I
it's
don't think. Oh, I just really. Did you watch the show?
I did. Yeah, that's actually how I was first introduced to
Yeah,
the
same.
books. Yeah. I
Yeah,
was like,
same.
man, this show's great. Oh, there's books? Man. And I read the books. I'm like, these are great, you know? Um,
And then they ran out of material.
yeah. And they also made some baffling changes. Like, there's like the Aegon plot line in Dance of Dragons that they just
Yeah,
ignored completely. And
yeah.
that makes me really sad because Jon Connington is one of my favorite characters in
He's
Song of
so
Ice and Fire.
interesting.
And he's only in like 8 chapters. I'm like, dang it,
Yeah,
George, get freaking When's a Winner. I want to see
yeah,
more Jon Connington. Damn
yeah. So
you.
like,
Damn you.
you just have like this random guy who's your favorite character. So like, for us,
I'm just
if
gonna
he's just
I'm just gonna
if
break
he's
into
like,
George's house in New Mexico and just be like, tell me what happened to Jon Connington, and I'll leave.
yeah, he's like, oh, I've written a new book, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's just the chapters of Jon Connington and Victorian Greyjoy, and everyone would be like, oh, we'll be like,
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
be like,
come on,
yes, finally.
yeah, I don't care about Daenerys anymore. Just give me these random characters who get their own chapters. It's brilliant.
Like, yeah, give
Um,
me Jon Connington. I'll do
yeah,
Jon Connington.
but like, yeah, it all went wrong. I haven't watched House of the Dragon yet. I read Fire and Blood.
First season was very good, and the second season was just kind of a big meh,
Yeah, I heard that,
which
and
was
it's like,
really
is it happening
disappointing.
again?
Cause like I was really, I was getting all hyped up again. I'm like, oh man, Game of Thrones is coming back. And
Yeah,
then that second season would just kind of, it wasn't terrible, but it was just like they made a bunch of decisions that were just like, why? Why did you do that? Like, why did you think that was a good idea?
yeah. Well, ultimately, it's like, TV, even like prestige TV, where you can have 10-hour-long episodes, is different from books. Like with books, you can introduce characters late in the third act and have them be super important. In a TV show, that just doesn't work. You know, Ev- everyone turns on and expects to see the same cast. Like, so
Though it would have been awesome seeing John Connington in the show.
yeah.
It made me really sad.
Um,
Just
but yeah, like the actual, especially the main cast, doesn't change because that's just how it works. Like, um, have you seen the clip of the actor Conleth Hill who plays Varys? Have you seen when they do the table read and
oh
you find
yeah,
out there and then that his character dies in
uh
like a
huh,
really bad way, and he's just like he just looks so annoyed,
yeah. He's just like, oh god,
and he's just like, oh, just throws his script on the table and is like, it's like, oh dear.
man. Watching the cast being interviewed during the whole season 8 thing was just painful to watch because you could tell like they were let down as much as we were the audience.
Yeah,
And it
but
sucks
like,
too, because like Benioff is a good writer. Like I read his book City of Thieves last
yeah,
year around this time. Really good book. I have no idea. It's just one of those things I think where so many things went wrong, you know, and
the
it's just sad.
the biggest thing that went wrong was they just didn't have enough episodes because it got too expensive. Like, you know, the um each series before was 10 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then the last two were 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's and then
One
one
was
of those
like I think
episodes,
7 was like 7 or 8, and then
yeah, like,
like 8 was like 6 or 7
yeah, and
episodes.
one
I'm
of
like,
those was just the battle in the dark where no one could see anything.
oh my god.
Um,
I'm just like, bruh, like you did Battle of the Bastards. That shit was awesome. Like, come
yeah.
on, what
Why
happened?
does the battle have to be at night, or why do you have to film it in a way that's realistic? Yeah, it's realistic that no one can see anything. Yeah, but it's crap television. Like,
Yeah,
um,
it's just like, and like think of Battle of Blackwater, which also takes place at nighttime.
yeah, but you
Looks
can
way
see everything.
better.
Yeah,
Looks so much better. It's just
Um,
like, oh my god, this is frustrating. I don't want to. I don't want to relive those memories. To be honest with you, like, oh god.
but yeah, so
I
I'd like
I
to watch
watched it
House
with
of
my
Dragon.
parents. And I was just like, what is going on here? What is this? Like Jamie's ending really made me mad, particularly because he's one of my favorite
Yeah,
characters.
but like, yeah, exactly. The first series you hated him, then after that, it's best character. Um, but that could happen in the books. Like
Oh,
that
I'm
could
sure,
happen
but
in
I'm
George
sure like George will have like a
because
will set it up better.
yeah, because you've got the time to spend with the characters to break those tropes. While in normal TV tropes, we all know what Jamie was going to do to make a good story, and that didn't happen because people they're not stories, they're real people.
I think it would
You
be a
know.
better ending if he had gone back there, killed Cersei, I'd have
Oh
been
yeah,
fine with it. I would have been like,
yeah,
okay,
and then he dies. Yeah,
and then he
whatever.
dies, like because
Yeah,
that it's appropriate. It felt to me, he
yeah,
killed the Mad King, and everyone hated him for it. Then
yeah,
he kills his sister, who's a Mad Queen, and also his sister. So now he's a kinslayer. He's not just a kingslayer anymore.
yeah,
Like you could have just done that, and like people wouldn't have been that mad.
yeah.
It's
But
just
yeah,
oh my god. Yeah, again,
uh,
I don't want to talk about that. Please, oh god, I don't want to relive that.
have you read the Magician series by Raymond E. Feist?
No, I have not. Didn't he write something with Janie Wirtz? Because like
Yeah,
people have been telling me about Janie Wirtz a lot lately.
yeah. So I read the Magician, the first trilogy this year, and the first one I thought was really good because it just takes swings, like because he doesn't know it's his first book that he's ever written and got published.
Hmm.
So again, he kind of does things that break what you would expect. So like you know, you're reading and then there's like, oh, there's a big cliffhanger, and then it's like 5 years later. You're like, wait, what? um, Big time jumps and stuff. And then I've finished the trilogy, and in the third book, there's a battle in a place called Armengar, I think it's called, and that's the best battle I've ever read. It's like Helm's Deep and Blackwater Bay combined.
Oh,
It was
all
just
right.
so cool, so cool.
I'm really
Uh,
weird with how I read fantasy because like there's some of them like Shannara where I'm like, I don't know, or there's
I
some
watched that TV show.
where I read like the names, like Raymond E. Feist. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know, could be
Yeah,
hokey.
so I bought the trilogy on Kindle for like a fiver. So, you know, Kindle's a lot easier. You can just kind of skip through it rather than having big books on your shelf taking up space.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I did want to ask, have you thought about books you want to read in 2025, or have you not thought that far yet?
Um, I've got so this
Like,
year
or I guess I should
I've
ask, like,
been
is your reading progress where you're like, I want to read some book. These are some books I want to get to in 2025, or you just kind of pick them up as you go.
um so I this year I've been quite structured in my reading. Like I've been trying to read a Jack London book every month. I've also got like this mystery challenge going on where my wife put together 12 books, one book a month, and just wrap them up.
Mm.
And they're either from our house or from our friends or from our family. So like I open them up and I'm like, oh, what's the book going to be? So like today I just uploaded my December one, so I found out what my December book's going to be, and it's from my sister-in-law. So I've been doing that, and that's been quite fun. Um, but next year I want to. I'm not going to read a Jack London book every month because it's kind of 12 months in. It's becoming a little bit of a chore.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I've got to read this book. So, but I want to. I want to read some more fantasy that's not written by old white men. That's always a good aim because I've been going like through the history of fantasy, so I've been reading a bit more classic fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's generally all written by old white guys. And then my priority is always to read the books that I have. I won't. I'm not. I'm very unlikely to go like, oh, I need to buy that new whatever book. Like
New shiny book
I'm
over
gonna read.
there.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I haven't got that much shelf space, and it's covered in books that I haven't read. I've got like probably 50, 60 books that I own and haven't read both physically and on
Well, I was about to say
Kindle.
you could read Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James,
Mm,
who is a gay black man, Jamaican
that
black
is.
man.
I didn't know he was gay actually.
So there
Uh,
you go. There you go. But no, you don't have to if you don't want to. I don't know what you want to. I don't know. Like, I have N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season somewhere. I think it's in my bedroom,
yeah,
which I've wanted to read for a while. Haven't gotten to it yet. Ursula K. Le Guin is one I've wanted to read for a long time. So,
yeah. I read Earthsea in my 20s when I wasn't a big reader, and it didn't blow me away.
Excuse me.
Um, that's all right. Uh,
It's been a
yeah,
long
it
day.
didn't.
It's been a busy day.
It's 1:45 where I am, mate. And my kids are sick, and my wife is sick, and I've had a full day at work, and uh,
Well, geez,
but
I'm glad you made it then.
nah, it's all right. They're okay. They just got a cold bug. Um, but yeah, uh, there's a few. Ursula K. Le Guin kind of reading the first Earthy book didn't blow me away, but that I wasn't really a big reader at the time then,
Mm.
so you kind of maybe I just didn't appreciate it.
I don't know where to start with her. I'm thinking either like Earthsea or like one of her sci-fi books, like Left Hand of Darkness or something.
People say that's very good.
I did get her book, Languages of the Night, which is a bunch of essays she wrote about writing fantasy. So I'm thinking maybe
Yeah,
I'll read that sometime next year. I don't know.
she seemed very cool. Like lots of interesting thoughts on, um, yeah, writing generally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to read like Brief History, Seven Killings, and um, some fantasy I want to get to. I want to read some like pre-Tolkien fantasy,
Okay.
So I'm hoping to read like Blood in the Mist, which is by a woman named Hope Mirrlees.
Mm.
King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, who is a Irish aristocrat who apparently is a really good writer of fantasy. So there's that as
Ooh.
well. Gorman Gas trilogy. I'm hoping to get to that.
I'd like to read that. I might audio that because I think the language in it just sounds really interesting to listen to because it's so kind of.
Discworld. Hoping to start Discworld. I
Okay.
I was going to do it this year, but I didn't get around to it because it's been a slow reading year.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to at least get to
I read,
Guards before.
I've read a fair amount of Discworld,
Oh, really?
uh,
Okay. Okay.
but I read it all when I was younger,
Oh, okay.
and so it hasn't. And
Do you like
I
them?
remember, I remember reading them and really enjoying them, but I can't really remember much. And because I read them very, like, I didn't read them in any order. So, like, I think I've read a fair few of the Vimes books, but I haven't read Guards. I think I read other ones first.
Like I read some reviews that made it sound like it was just like a bunch of bad like dumb fantasy jokes, and I'm like, okay, that's not really interesting. But I've seen like so many people who've like been touched by it in a
Yeah,
way, and I'm like, maybe I'll try it. And then finally, I was convinced by some friends of mine to read it. And I read some lines like from Terry Pratchett. I'm like, okay, Terry, I see you cooking,
yeah. I
but
think I
like,
like Terry Pratchett more than Discworld. You know what I mean? Like,
uh huh.
he was such a top bloke. Um, but yeah, I remember reading Small Gods. I thought that was really good.
Yeah,
And
I
the
want
I
to read that because my favorite fantasy novel of all time is American Gods, and I've
okay,
heard it be compared to Small Gods.
yeah, it's
So,
about like gods getting their power through belief. So the
yeah.
the gods in this story are don't have any believers, or may have one. So they're kind of out trying to get some. Um, what else? I really liked Monstrous Regiment. I remember reading that one,
And I'm
which
hoping to.
was
Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
I was going to say it was where it's kind of set in kind of like Napoleonic times. So there's like guns and stuff,
Oh,
and these people are in a war and they're fighting, and the main character is a woman who's like snuck away because only boys are allowed to fight, and then she discovers that like her whole regiment are women, all
oh.
with like fake mustaches and stuff.
Ha, ha. No. Also, I am hoping to at least start. I'm not gonna read. I'm not gonna be crazy enough and try to read it all in 1 year. But I'm gonna try and start Malazan, Book of the Fallen, because
Nice.
that's another one. A lot of my friends have been like, Britton, you should read this, and I'm like, yeah. I'm generally wary of like big fantasy series unless it's
Yeah.
like A Song of Ice and Fire, which like grabs me instantly. Like I'm
Yeah.
not really wanting to do Wheel of Time. I'm hesitant about, I was hesitant about Discworld for a few years for similar reasons as well. It's a lot of them. But luckily,
Yeah.
like, there's like sub-series, I guess. So you
Yeah.
kind of just jump around. So I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little better. But, like, Malzahn, I'm at least going to try Gardens of the Moon. I hope
Yeah.
it'll, I hope I'll like it. I've heard a lot of mixed things about it.
Oh yeah, I haven't read anything. One thing that's good about that though is that it's done and it's 10 books. Like,
Yeah.
So you know how big the pie is that you're taking a bite out of. Yes, there's all the sub series and because Ian Esselmont or whatever has written other books in that universe and all that kind of stuff. But you're like, cool. I know how big. Yeah, I know how big this pie is. Rather than some of them where you're like, just keep cranking out books. And you're like, whoa,
Where's it
when's this gonna
going?
finish? Yeah.
Where's the end point? What else? There's probably more I could bring up. I mean,
Yeah.
I excuse me. Sledge versus the Labyrinth, which is by my friend Nick Horvath. I'm hoping to read. It's an indie book because
Nice.
I'm trying to dip more into indie at the moment.
Yeah. I've got.
It's hard because there's like, good lord, keeping track of your regular TBRs fine. And there's this whole indie thing that's blowing up. I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah,
why?
and indie like some like not all authors, but a lot of authors like crank them out like 4 books a year,
I know. It's like, my god.
and I'm like, what? Yeah.
Like Adrian Tchaikovsky, that dude cranks them out like it's going out of style.
Yeah.
Just like, dude. Or
Like you could literally be like, oh man, my favorite author is Adrian Tchaikovsky. And people are like, mine too, and then you could have not read any of the same books.
Yeah.
In the same genre.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like picking up one of his like standalones, maybe. That might even be like 2026. I'm like, man, like, because it's weird. Like, I'm kind of like, there are like books I want to read before the year's over, but I don't like to plan them out because then it feels like I have to read them.
Yeah.
I like to be like, okay, maybe this month I'll read this book, and if not, I have a little more wiggle room because I'm more of a mood reader in general.
Yeah, I plan out on a month basis. But hey, I'm not beholden to anybody on that. If I want to mix it up, I mix it up, and it's a fine line between planning and then making it a chore. And if it's a chore, then it's not fun. Like,
yeah, it's like I like reading for fun. I want it to be fun for me.
Do you feel as a person on BookTube or whatever that like you feel pressure to read faster, read more books, get through more?
Sometimes anyway. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's just a slow year. It's fine. I generally read fast anyway, or at least I like to think I do. It's been a slow reading year this month, but it's just because a bunch of stuff's gotten in the way. But yeah, sometimes. But I'm not like I don't do like express TBRs because I know if I did that, I would just it would kill the fun for me. Now, there's people who do that, and that's fine. They can do that. I'm not saying don't do that. It's just I'm talking about me personally. I just can't do that.
Yeah, it just helps me plan out like, oh, hang on, I haven't read from that series for a while. Let's go back to that, and then I'm like, okay, I really want to read like, well, this year I've been like, I want to kind of try and read a different fantasy book every month. I want to read a Jack London book every month. I've got my mystery book, and then I'm like, okay, like let's read some other smaller books because these ones are longer or whatever. I like that side as well of mixing in long and short books. I quite often read 2 or 3 books at the same time.
Yeah, I read about 2 or 3, or if I have a comic, I'll read like 2 books and a comic, at the same time. Because
I usually have something on my Kindle and then a physical book.
And then like there's some people who are like, how do you do that? And I'm the same way. I'm like, how do you just read one book at a time? I can't do that. Like I just no
Yeah.
like it was funny reading Jonathan Strange Mr. Norrell this year because my parents would walk in while I was reading it and they would see how gigantic it is and they're just like, my God, Britton. It's like, are you liking it? And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Is that the longest book you've read?
Oh man. Maybe aside from it might be one. It's one of the longest books I've read.
Long, yeah. I've never read it, but
I've read some of like King's chunkier books, but
longest book I read was it's definitely Les Miserables by Victor Hugo.
Well, Tale of Two Cities is pretty long, but that's like 500 something. But let me see how long.
Yeah,
how many
that's
pages
not.
That is. Let me see how many pages that is.
Yeah, I read Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. That is long. I took
I know the musical of Les Mis.
Yeah.
I haven't read the book.
Yeah.
You know.
So like, for example, in the
489. Okay, that's not very long. Yeah, I remember it felt epic.
But it's Dickens, you know, got paid by the word. So
yeah, that's true. I do love Dickens though. I mean, I made a
the Dickens that I've read. I've really enjoyed. I read Oliver Twist, Christmas Carol. I've got Tale of Two Cities on my
Tale of Two Cities great. I mean, it's pretty epic. So, you know.
I like how just like I think Dickens is really funny.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why I liked Strange and Norrell a lot.
Yeah,
so I'm like, oh, what if Dickens wrote a fantasy novel?
Yeah.
Well, I guess he technically kind of did with A Christmas Carol, but if he wrote like a proper fantasy, like with magic and stuff, you know, like how we would see a fantasy novel nowadays, it would probably be Jonathan Strange Mr. Norrell.
Yeah. Les Mis was huge. So like right at the beginning of the show, he Jean Valjean like steals these candles from a bishop, and the bishop is like, I can see you're in distress. Here, take the candlesticks. Like that's like the first scene in the show. The first 50 pages of the book. My book copy I had was like 1,300 pages long, a very, very, very small font. The first 50 pages of that is just the life of the bishop, who just gives the guy candlesticks, and that's all he does. There's whole sections which are just streams of consciousness from Victor Hugo about post-Napoleon Europe, post-Napoleon France, what it's like, what it means to be French, you know, the state
France
of the poor.
France is having another revolution because they haven't learned their lesson after last time. Because
and there's a lot
didn't
of
learn
like,
their lesson after last time.
Yeah, and like so, like Marius, his grandfather, was from the old like the people who they're revolting against, and he just was like didn't give up his beliefs. He's like, I'll live longer than this revolution will, you know. I'll just wait, and then it'll all be back to me.
I saw the musical, I saw the movie version, but like it felt very Dickensian, and kind of it's very like socially outraged, and there's a lot of strange. There's a lot of strange characters as well.
Yeah, but yeah, it was
not
brilliant.
Quite as wacky as some of Dickens's characters, but like a similar way.
Yeah, the book was very good, but I will very unlikely read it again. But it is, someone said it's 306 because it's written in. You've got volumes, and then you've got chapters, and it's 365 chapters, so you could read a chapter a day. But the version I've got, actually, I think my wife got it from Costco. It's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But that was a big, heavy book. Like I was reading it in bed, and I was like, if I drop this, I will die.
Or you'll hurt yourself pretty bad.
Yeah, book force trauma.
Yeah, like I mean, I had to like I don't know if you do this, but I had to like kind of hype myself up to read like Jonathan Strange Mr. Norrell because I bought it in like 2020, maybe the copy I have, and then it took me like 4 years to be like, okay, I'm gonna read it now.
Yeah, that's because like you're like, oh, that book's like 1,000 pages. I could read like 3 books, and that's in that time.
I mean, it was never boring though. I mean, hell, I wanted to see more. Like, yo, you could have thrown even more stuff in here. I'm here for it.
Yeah, yeah, it was really really good. That's one of my books of the year, definitely.
Have you seen Have you read Paranacy at all?
No, no, I'd
Oh,
like
okay.
to. Um, I
That's what
definitely
I
like
read
to.
that before I read Strange and Norrell because it's shorter
Yeah,
and
yeah, so,
fantastic. I thought.
yeah. That's one of my books of the year. I think The Sea Wolf, actually by Jack London, is probably my favorite Jack London book. Um, and I read Day of the Triffids this year.
Wanted to read that for a while, for a long time.
That that's really good. I really enjoyed that. Um, it's very it's you might if you like Stranger Noel, I think you'd like it because it's very British in that the book opens and he's like, I knew everything was wrong because it was a Wednesday, but it felt like a Sunday.
I'm a bad American. I really like British stuff.
Um,
Because generally, like, there's that kind of rivalry between America and UK, kind of. I mean,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
not like literally warring with each other anymore, but there's still kind of like that, like it's like a sibling rivalry now,
yeah. You are the little brother. It's
or like the
um,
like exes in a sitcom who are just trying to like, you know, outdo one another, kind of like that.
uh, yeah. That's definitely out there for one of my favorite books. I think.
Oh no, Strange and Norrell is definitely on my top list of the year. So yeah, I got to read Eileen, and I'm gonna read Deathless, which is by Catherine Vellante,
Okay.
which is like a fantasy novel set in like Stalin, I think either Leningrad or Stalingrad. I don't know.
Okay.
But it sounded really interesting to me because I'm actually quite fascinated with Soviet history during that like
Yeah.
when it started to like World War II. You know,
Okay.
like the
Like the
Stalin era.
revolutions and the Bolshevism and all that kind of thing,
Yeah,
rather than yeah,
because like I just find a lot of those characters really interesting, even though a lot of them were like terrible people.
yeah. I've read tons of Russian literature. I read One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. That was good. That's quite short, and it's about a guy in a gulag, and it is literally just a day in his life. So like,
Bet that's very pleasant, heartwarming
yeah,
experience.
he had a great time. Uh,
Yeah, I
and
remember
then
I got a haircut once with my dad, and they just freaking shaved my head off, just shaved my hair off, and I looked like a gulag, like I looked like just out
an
of a
inmate.
Russian
Yeah,
movie. I'm just
yeah.
like, I walked out. I'm like, good lord, I look like I just got out of a gulag. And of course, my dad doesn't know what a gulag is, and I'm like, it's like a Russian prison. It's like a really bad Russian prison, like back in the
Yeah.
day.
And I read The Master and Margarita as well. That was
Oh, I've heard
good.
that one's really good.
That one's I'd recommend that. That was some parts of it I thought were absolutely amazing, and some parts were just super trippy. Like,
I
uh,
heard like the devil's in it, and he's like a
yeah,
cat or something.
uh,
Or there's like an
the
evil
devil is
cat.
friends. The devil is friends with an evil black cat.
Oh, yeah. Because
The
of
evil
course
black
he
cat
is.
is Beelzebub, and there's two like main parts. Well, there's like a few parts, but one of them is like the devil is in Soviet Russia, and he's just messing with people, like, and
I
I really enjoyed that.
I
And then
do
there's a
know a
bit where
funny story about that. I think Stalin actually liked that book, and he didn't want to kill the guy because he
yeah,
liked his book so much or something. That happened with somebody. I don't know if it was him
yeah,
specifically, but I remember that happened because like Stalin was actually a like big reader. Like he really loved
oh,
literature,
okay.
poetry specifically,
Mm. Um,
which is really fascinating because like you think of Stalin as like this really cold, heartless like being, which he
yeah,
was. No, that's also why I want to talk to Cam Campbell because like he talks a
yeah.
lot about Russian history. So I'm like,
He knows.
hey,
I think he can speak Russian and read Russian. Like,
really? That
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, because he was like, oh, I'm reading this book in his lovely Scottish tone. Oh, and it's taking me a lot longer than I was expecting, but I am reading it in Russian. And it was like,
I took Spanish man, that was hard. Can't imagine trying to learn Russian.
Yeah, completely different alphabet, completely different everything.
At least with Spanish, there's the alphabet that we know and love.
Yeah, and no means no.
Yeah. Like how they didn't even try to make another sound for it. They're just like, no, just that'll be fine. Yeah, no, oh man. But yeah, it's Christmas time. It's gonna be New Year's. Oh man. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about actually. I have I don't want to keep you for too long because I know it's probably late out there in England.
It is. It's just well, it's now tomorrow.
Oh well, okay. It's the 4th over there now. But thanks Tim for coming on here and hanging out with me for a little while.
Oh no, thank you for having me on,
I'm
Britton. I've
I'm
really enjoyed it.
I'm glad we managed to get this together before I went on my trip because I'm going to
Yeah,
Florida next week. As of the recording of this, anyway, because this will probably be
yeah.
up. This will probably be up later on. But yeah, I'm glad we got this together. As I like to do before the end of these things, if you have any social media or anything like that, feel free to share it.
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube as Tim Burbage Reads. I also have Instagram, which I think is Timothy Burbage, but I don't really use that very much. And yeah, so come along to my YouTube channel where I do book reviews, monthly TBRs, monthly wrap ups, and some other interesting things as well. And I'm planning a read along for A Hero Born, which is the first in the Legend of the Condor Hero series, in January. So I'll be posting loads of videos about that in January. So that should be good.
All right. Well, again, thanks for coming on, man. I'd like to hang out again. Maybe we could do like I'm gonna try and do more buddy reads this upcoming year. So maybe we could do something. I don't know.
Yeah, I did Jonathan Strange as a buddy read, and it greatly improved my enjoyment of it, I think. And it kind of helps keep you going in such a chonker. So,
Yeah, we can figure something out. But anyway,
yeah.
thanks for coming on here. This was
Oh,
fun.
thank you for inviting me.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Until next time.